Thanks for Hi Daniel, how you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I really enjoyed the film. Thanks for talking to me today.
Oh, I'm glad.
Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about how this project came up for you.
Um, Peter Spears, the producer, approached me and we were talking about trying to find a project to do together. And
Yeah.
it had been passing back and forth various novels and books and ideas that we were interested in. And this one really stuck. We both had received it independently. And Shannon Puffel's novel just was so compelling and so exciting that we reached out to her, convinced her to let us have the option to try to set it up, and we just went
Mhm.
full steam ahead.
Oh, great. Obviously this was adapted from the book. How was the adaptation? Was there a lot that wasn't you were able to fit in, or how did that how did it turn into a film?
Shannon Puffel's novel is very interior and
Yeah.
moves back and forth in time. It's a lot of remembrance, uh, and so the adaptation process was identifying a writer. I knew this writer, Bryce Cass, and introduced him to Peter. And Bryce and I had developed something else together, and we thought it'd be a really good fit. And Bryce and I just set out to give these characters a voice, make their story active, and give it a beginning, middle, and end. It's a very impressionistic novel. It's really beautiful and
Yeah,
very evocative. So we tried to honor that, but to give it a forward drive.
exactly. Can you talk a little bit about the time period, what it was like back then for all these characters?
Sure. You know, um, this is set in 1956 and through 1957, which is a really interesting time in American history. We're sort of out of the McCarthy era. Eisenhower is still president, so things are still very conservative. But subsequently, we have the beat poets and writers and artists that are you know, getting some renown. Really interestingly, Daisy Edgar-Jones and Jacob Elordi both asked me for books to read. And
Okay.
yeah, they're both big readers. And
All right.
and I had made up a packet of things, historical information, newsworthy things, popular culture, movies, and the two books that were number one bestsellers in 1956 were Peyton Place, which is a melodrama
Okay.
which was adapted into a famous soap opera, maybe the first American soap opera that takes a
Yeah.
look at uh, the moral code and hypocrisies of a small town in America, Peyton Place. And the other book that was a bestseller was Jack Kerouac's On the Road. And those books really suited these two characters because our two leads are someone who's in a very conventional marriage and then someone who's sort of lives on the fringes as a hustler and card sharp.
Exactly. Um, I mean, there's so much to like about this film. The characters are all so complex. But can you talk to me a little bit about how Muriel's life changes with the arrival of Julius?
Yeah, I think this starts off, and it's little bit of a misdirect. It starts off as a love triangle. Two guys
Yeah.
come back from the Korean War, and we meet Muriel, who's engaged to one of them, and the brother, played by Jacob Elordi, comes
Yeah.
in, and she seems to have a real form a real alliance with him, and they all make a agreement to meet in California 6 months later when they're discharged from
Mhm.
the army to start a life all together as a family. And so there's this certain expectation that Muriel is going to fall in love with Julius, and really, as the story unfolds, we learn that Julius is uh, he falls in love with a guy that he works with in a casino and starts to form a relationship with this guy. And Muriel begins a sort of journey of her own as she tries to find him and try to go to the places, goes to the places where he might go, like the queer bars in San Diego in that time. And so it's a
Mhm.
bit of a journey of self-discovery for Muriel, who from her life as a waitress and a conventional housewife to someone who secretly has this secret double life of betting on horses and is kind of checking out the queer scene in San Diego.
Yeah. I obviously I don't want to give any spoilers away for this who haven't seen it, but I did love the ambiguity of that final scene. And when I saw it with an audience, everybody was like, "Wow, that really." Everybody had their own interpretation, but just can you talk to me about the ending, without obviously without giving any spoilers away?
Yeah, I think without giving too much away, I think that sets what sets this love story apart is that it has queer characters in it and they're not victims. And that was one of the
Yeah.
things that really appealed to me. You know, it's a story of two people who really see each other and kind of change the
Mhm.
direction of each other's lives, and they have a kind of platonic love for one another. And in a in a in most other films about uh, with gay characters in them, they would end tragically, in the 1950s. So this was a hopeful ending. And I
Yeah.
think without giving away too much, you kind of get to see everyone uh, going towards their best lives and their true selves.
Yeah. I mean, we mentioned this briefly earlier, but um, being in a gay relationship is never easy throughout society. But what was it like, especially during this period?
We tried to give the sense of danger of what these characters are doing. They're
Yeah.
really living on the fringes, and by pursuing their true nature, they're kind of endangering themselves in a way because
Yeah.
you could be arrested. It's not for another, I think, 10 or 12 years that homosexuality is decriminalized in California, where our story takes place. And I tried to give a sense of anticipation when Muriel goes to the bar. She gets a little bit of a secret invitation from a woman she meets at the track to go to the Chester bar. And I was trying to
Yeah.
give a sense of the danger involved in that. If she was exposed, it would have ended her marriage and probably lose her job, and maybe even be persecuted.
Yeah. I mean, of all the layers all the characters have, I was fascinated by all of them, but especially Muriel and her journey toward finding out who she was and what she wanted and where she wanted to be. I just thought that, I mean, all these characters were fascinating, but especially Muriel. She had so many dimensions to her.
Yeah, that was a really interesting character. And Daisy, when we thought of Daisy Edgar-Jones for this, I thought, wow, that's the woman who was uh, my friend during lockdown when I watched her, series of Normal People. And she
Yeah.
managed to make this really complex, not particularly warm and fuzzy character very compelling and very sympathetic. And I
Yeah.
thought with everything that Muriel has to do in this film, that Daisy was going to uh, really understand it and really know what to do with it, and she did. She was fantastic collaborator on this.
It's a wonderful ensemble. Can you talk about the rest of the team, the cast as well?
Yeah, I guess as we put together the cast, they kind of came together in this order. We met Daisy, who loved the screenplay, and we brought her on. And then we met, someone had suggested Jacob, and like miraculously, he loved the script. And so we
Mhm.
read the two of them together. And then we started to see people for the role of Henry. And we saw a few people, we tested them with Jacob, and there was an actor who I was really fascinated with that I always thought would be a perfect fit, named Diego Calva, who I had seen in some independent films and I'd seen him on Narcos. And by the time we made this film, he had landed the lead in Hollywood. Babylon,
Yeah,
and opposite Margot Robbie and Brad
yeah,
Pitt. So, I convinced Diego to come on and do this with us, and he was just the perfect Henry. Sasha
mhm,
Kaye joined us. We had seen a few people who had sent in tapes. Sasha's came in, and it was just there was no doubt.
yeah,
I didn't really see anyone else, and we put Sasha and Daisy together, and they had an incredible chemistry. And then the last person to come on was Will Poulter in the role of Muriel's husband Lee, and that was the trickiest role to cast.
mm,
And just from meeting Will, I knew that he would give this character who he's a very unconventional uh, antagonist because he's so
yeah,
likable. I knew that
yeah.
he would give this character a lot of depth and a lot of dignity. And the last person who I was so excited to meet, we actually revised the role of Gail for her is Kat Cunning.
Mhm.
In the novel and in the first iteration of the screenplay, the character of Gail was described as the dark, mysterious European woman. And Kat Cunning came in just like a force of nature, and it was as if Jane Mansfield walked into the room, and I thought, okay, we have to revise this role. She
Yeah,
really brought like this vivacious and very sensitive performance to the character of Gail. It's like one of those people who just came in fully formed, and we just tried to keep up with her. She was so great.
yeah. Congratulations again on getting the film into theaters. But if I remember correctly, this film premiered at Toronto last year,
Yes, that's right.
and then it did some festivals, including out on film in Atlanta. But and it's was in theaters, now it's in theaters again. So just can you talk a little bit about the journey of getting this into theaters and getting distribution with Sony Pictures Classics?
Yeah, we met the people from Sony after Toronto,
Yeah,
and I couldn't imagine a better partner for this. I
yeah,
mean, you know, they've distributed all of my favorite films from, Merchant Ivory to Pedro Almodovar. So I really feel like this is in very, very good company, capable hands of Sony Pictures, who will take a film like this and really, you know, they feel it has a long tail and a long life. So I hope more and more people will get to discover it through them.
yeah. I mean, in a society of marvels and superheroes, it's so great to see a small, intimate, character-driven film like this in theaters. So congratulations again. Um, I'm going to wrap up in a few minutes. I have to ask you about fellow travelers, that experience.
Sure. Yeah, Fellow Travelers was this singular experience. Ron Nicewaner and I, the writer who wrote and created Fellow Travelers, um,
Mhm.
also wrote Philadelphia.
Yeah,
He's someone I've admired for a long time. I've known him a little bit socially. We were trying to
yeah,
find something to do. And finally one day he called me with Robbie Rogers, his co-producer on it, and said, "This is the one. Just say yes. You're going to love this." And I said, "Well, let me read this. Let me read the script." And I read the two scripts, that night, and I couldn't. I was so excited. It was
yeah,
a story that I'd heard of, but it's sort of a hidden history or a buried history of the
yeah,
Lavender Scare, concurrent with the Red Scare, where thousands of gay and lesbian workers in the government were persecuted, lost their jobs, were exposed to their families or worse. So
yeah,
it was a very exciting project, and I got to set it up with Ron in Toronto and cast everyone, and I brought in all my favorite creative collaborators and met some new ones, and then we got this incredible cast, and Johnny Bailey, Matt Bomer, and Allison Williams, and Noah Ricketts, and
yeah.
Jelani Aladdin, like are like family now. So we
Okay.
really it was one of those rare, great experiences where everybody brought their best work to it, and we're just so excited to be there. And I think it really shows in the final, the final series.
Exactly. Congratulations. All right, On Swift Horses. It's back in theaters for Pride Month in June, and is an extraordinary film. You should all go see it. Thank you again for making the film. Thank you, Dana, for sharing it. It was lovely talking to you.
Thank you so much.
You take care. Nice talking to you. Thanks.